Dakota Lane.
What's up, man?
It's great to see you, man.
Great to be here.
Thanks so much for joining me.
Absolutely.
First of all, I just want to begin giving people context for you. You came on 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And I don't think we'd actually met yet.
That's crazy. So
yeah,
or
maybe we met for a moment or something, but we knew each other through Instagram.
Yeah.
And so it's very exciting today. I mean, what would you say the percentage increase of knowledge on each other's lives?
Yeah. Substantial.
Since that time.
Yeah, exponential.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It'd be funny to go back and listen to that one after today.
We were strangers.
Yeah, exactly. Strangers just doing an interview on physical excellence. But today I want to talk about a much broader, to have a much broader conversation and talk about generally personal growth, personal transformation, the role that faith and holiness play in all that stuff, especially as men. And you've got quite the story. Obviously, your physical transformation story is pretty substantial, but I think even more important than that is your spiritual transformation, your growth as a man. And I think both of us, especially coming from backgrounds and family situations where we didn't feel like we had the man that we hoped to become in the household with us as we were growing up. And so I want to start by first just highlight a little bit of that physical transformation, talk a little bit about what you do now to give people some context for who you are.
Yeah, so I started my personal training business about 8 years ago. Before that, I was in seminary for 2 years. And then after that, I went to Franciscan, got a theology degree, came back to Denver, went to the Augustine Institute, got a master's degree, was working with high school kids, and had previously worked as a personal trainer, just kind of as a college job. And towards the end of my grad school, just kind of fell in love with that physical aspect and how it related to the human aspect and the human formation and spiritual formation. And so I kind of just blended it all together. And Jesus just kind of made it very clear I had enough work to do it full time. So I just thought, okay, well, why go look for a job when I'm already working a job? And so I just formalized it and launched it from there. I started Dakota Lane Fitness 8 years ago or so, and it's been a wild journey. Work with people all over the world, 23 countries, all 50 states. Over 800 people. It's been a beautiful journey. So yeah, obviously it started kind of like you mentioned, just a seed planted in my heart through my own physical transformation, where I was just extremely small my entire life. In high school, I wasn't even 100 pounds. So my junior year, most fifth graders are 100 pounds. So I was just extremely small. And as I grew in seminary and got into more of that physical aspect, and I just fell in love with what I call the school of virtue. Throughout that physical discipline. And so now I get to help other people do it. And it's been a beautiful journey.
It's so awesome. I don't think I ever realized, so you never really worked a full job after college.
No, it's
not a full job. That's not the right way to say it.
No, you're right.
For another company.
My wife always gives me a hard time because I've never made a resume.
Never got a performance review.
Yeah, never got a performance review, never done formal interviews per se. I had jobs throughout grad school.
Calls,
and exactly.
Zoom calls.
Yeah. So it's been an interesting journey, but yeah, never anything formal per se.
That's crazy, dude. So what's really funny about that, and the podcast audience has heard me talk about our men's group many times. And really, I love in your journey, your story of just thinking about the salesman, our men's group, and how you just really embody all the things that we're really shooting for in such an awesome way, because we're really driven. Obviously, when forming the group, it was I want guys who want to be providers and are ambitious and want to be successful financially in life, care about fitness, care about the spiritual life. And so you and I mean, we were already meeting regularly before we started that group, and I wanted to basically add into our one-on-one time some group time with the guys that are like us, and just been transformational to see that. But what I love about your story is when I describe you to other people, I'm like, he's like a bodybuilder with a master's in theology.
It's pretty accurate.
Which is just such a wild and rare combination of things. And so tell me a little bit about growing in both of those at the same time. I feel like so often when people are, and even the way I describe seeking excellence is that people typically will pick one or two avenues of the 6 or 7 pillars that I list out for people in building an excellent life. It's very easy to say, I'm going to be financially successful, kind of neglect my marriage. I'm going to be physically excellent, but typically that comes along with, I think, especially with the guys, with most notably throwing chastity out the window, but a lot of times just the spiritual life in general, are kind of dabbling and being very lukewarm in their spiritual life. You don't see a lot of guys, and you know this from just gym culture and things, who are devout in their faith. There's people who believe in God, who go to church occasionally or whatever, but think the military was very similar to that, where it's kind of like generally belief in God,
Mm-hmm.
maybe more conservative leaning, but also not super formed or
Right.
very intentional with their faith life. And so what I love about it is you and I both, I feel like, came to the same kind of philosophy of life throughout our experiences. So tell me a little bit about you forming that and your perspective on saying, yes, I want to push myself physically and spiritually and academically and all these things.
Yeah, I mean, I always like to mention, just from a human standpoint, that when I started, it really did come from a desire to be noticed. That's kind of what it started as, was just having that lack of father figure per se, and just wanting to get attention, quite frankly. And that's kind of where it started, even though I was in seminary. So had really, solid formation, but I had this kind of other desire, and they had a really nice gym there, and we had, I had some free time, so I just started working out, and I'd always been into athletics and stuff. But I really found early on, kind of like I mentioned, what I call the school of virtue, or the theology of discipline, that the beautiful thing with the life of health and fitness is that as you begin to apply yourself to making yourself better, it's not just about the physical, obviously. It goes so much deeper. And one thing that I've been talking about a lot recently with clients is that God's literally just built this within our physiology, that recreation recreates us. So when you do recreation correctly, it recreates you. And so that's what I began to find when I was working out. Very quickly, starting to make physical transformations, I realized, like, okay, this is not going to bring me the ultimate happiness just because I have bigger biceps. It's nice. It makes me kind of happy, but it's not going to be the fulfillment of my desires. But what was there was that step by step, little by little, bettering myself and mastering myself. And that's really what it came down to. And what I realized is that if my job as a human, particularly as a man, is to give of myself to others, to lay my life down, as the old adage goes, you can't give what you don't have. Well, how do you have yourself? You have to possess yourself. Well, how do you possess yourself? You have self-mastery and self-control. And what more obvious way to do that than in the natural world of being able to control my appetites, my hunger, being able to push myself in the gym physically. And so as I began to realize that when I possessed myself better and had self-mastery, I was able to give of myself better. So obviously at the time, I thought I was going to be in the priesthood. And so it was very obvious that, the more that I am able to control myself, the better I'll be able to give myself to other people. And now it's beautiful that I get to work with a ton of priest clients. I've probably worked with over 75 priests. And I see it so explicitly that in their vocation as a priest, the ones who invest in themselves and who have that self-mastery are just so much more fruitful. And so this self-love dynamic, we're so focused, especially just as, hardworking men, we're so focused on doing and like giving and just performing and being productive. And those are important things, but we can't forget that love of neighbor is predicated on love of self. And this goes for whether you're a dad or a priest. And so it starts with us, and it can be very easy to make it a pithy thing of like, oh yeah, love of self, like spa days. Like, no. I'm talking about like actually making the choice, willing the good of the other, yourself being the other in this case, where you're willing your own good in the way that God's designed it, that's built in our physiology. You could sit down on the couch and scroll Instagram for an hour, and you're doing nothing, and it's supposed to be a relaxing experience. You get up and you feel like less of a man. You feel exhausted. You go work out for an hour, even if you don't want to. Afterwards, you're energized. You're ready to like take on the world. Or, you go play a basketball game, even if you're out of breath, like you just feel so much better afterwards because that recreation begins to recreate us. So for me, the theology of discipline started to come down to the fact that I realized before the fall, our body was subordinate to our soul. So what our soul desired, our body followed suit with. Well, after the fall, that became ruptured. So now our body constantly rebels against our soul, and we deal with that on a daily basis in a number of ways. So the way to start to combat that, to reorder that relationship that God created, is in the simple ways of saying no to those little desires, where my soul, my mind is taking mastery again over my body. And I'm able to start to have dominion again over those decisions and over myself, my own appetites. And that's the beauty, is that when you start to do that, it can very easily, obviously in the gym culture and the fitness culture, become very self-serving. And absolutely it can become very vain, and it can become all about you. But so can prayer. We can just do all the Catholic things and check all the boxes and make it all about us and our image. But when you do it the right way, obviously it's for others. So that's the same thing with fitness, with just the pursuit of excellence, is that as you begin to grow in it, you realize that I'm making myself better, but in doing so, it's making everybody else better around me. And I see that probably most explicitly in my parent clients whose families just begin to transform. The way that their kids view them, the way that they're engaged in their families, in their marriage. They're not doing marriage counseling. They're not doing a marriage retreat. They're simply starting to work out more regularly and eat healthier and drink more water, sleep better, and pay attention to the things on the foundation of humanity. And all of a sudden it's starting to ripple into all those other areas. So I think it's so easy to look down the road at, all these other issues and these vices and things. And you forget that so much of the training, the practice, just comes from the day-to-day, the mundane desires, which is obviously very explicitly the same in the spiritual life. So I know that's kind of all over the place, but the beauty of it, like I said, is that dynamic of self-mastery, that the more I'm able to possess myself through loving myself, the better I'm able to give of myself and to love others.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that and thank you for your honesty in saying that it just began in a sort of self-serving type of way. And I think that in my mind, there's something to that, I think, especially as men. And I don't know if that's like a vanity thing that I have, but there's certain times when I'm talking about physical excellence, it's always mildly uncomfortable because I talk about this to a crowd of sometimes 1,000 people, sometimes 50 people.
Sure.
But in the United States of America, any crowd of more than 10, you're going to have people that are overweight. Mm-hmm. But also, I think out there in the crowd, you're going to have especially men who are underweight,
sure,
or like just scrawny. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, to me, that's also very much not physically excellent. And it gets uncomfortable talking about it a little bit because you're talking about the importance of all of these things and how everything you just laid out, like discipline and physical excellence, lead into discipline and excellence in other areas of our lives. Self-mastery allows us to be a better self-gift. It's a form of self-love and willing our good. Health is really important, but it also gives us more energy and helps us to show up our best in every area of our lives. And so it's really interesting when I do those things because this literally just happened not that long ago, giving a talk. And a guy had asked something about it afterwards, and I talked about this. But what do you think? How do you balance that now, looking back on that? It obviously got you started in the right direction. I think you eventually came to a fork in the road later on where it was like, am I doing this just for me? Or am I doing this because I want to be great? And I think this is a good way to push myself. But do you agree with me that there's a certain aspect of just like masculinity that I think, even outside of the looks and the vanity of it, that I think just gets unleashed and you can't tap into other than through some form of physical suffering?
Oh, completely. And like I said, it's really built into our physiology. So much of what I talk about with my clients, and to be clear, the approach that I take, like most of my clients are not per se physically excellent. They're on their way there. But I don't work with people who are where I'm at. The goal is to help them with where they're at to progress. And so I work with people from all backgrounds, severe eating disorders, severe obesity, severe insecurities. And that's the beauty of it, is that that's the point. The reason why you need a savior is because we're sinners. The reason why we need a coach is because we need to be coachable. Like, we need to grow. We have areas to grow. So yeah, especially as men, I think that it's built into our physiology. Our bodies give us a really good indicator of what to do and what not to do if we start to learn the language. What I mean by that is, let's just take a very basic example in the gym. If you're doing a bicep curl, it's very easy to want to, when you're going too heavy, to start to use leverage. So that in and of itself indicates to you what you should not be doing. Your body's trying to make it easier for you. It's trying to lean into something easier to make that hard exercise, which is going to make you better, more easy. And it's the same thing with our life. Whereas men, there's things that we do that feel difficult, but when we do them, they end up making us better, in the same way that doing a bicep curl is going to make your biceps better. So it's very much built into who we are. And so when we start to feel those things that are uncomfortable, it's very much highlighting probably something that you actually should be doing. Obviously, it's thrown around all the time. We're not made for comfort. But what I think practically as men, it can become so taboo of like, oh, well, you're just a bodybuilder, so like that's just your hobby. And not to say that every man needs to be a bodybuilder by any means, but I think that every man should have some sort of applying themselves to the physical because of the way we're made, because it's so good for us. It's built into our physiology. Like I said, that recreation recreates us. After you work out, you feel so much better. God literally has put in chemicals into our brain that are released, endorphins, when we work out, that are like, good job. It's a pat on the back. You just feel so much better. So yeah, I think that's kind of what it was for me growing up, is that I kind of just felt like this lacking. And for a lot of men, they have that physical transformation that stops there. And they're just like, I'm bigger, I'm getting more attention, I'm more attractive. And that for them is the fulfillment, which obviously we know that's not the fulfillment. That's just the first step. It's really how you apply it. But yeah, it's not to say like that you have to have a certain amount of muscle or a certain body fat percentage. It's really about applying yourself to those day-to-day tasks that are difficult to do. In the same way that in the spiritual life, a lot of it is difficult to do. A lot of the prayer life is hard to show up at. There's times that are great, that it's easy, but a lot of it's going to be just the trudging through and just doing the thing that you know that you should do because you know that you should do it, which is what virtue is. It's choosing the good habitually despite not wanting to. So yeah, I think as men, it can be very easy to look at others and to somebody in my position and think like, that's just your hobby, you're into bodybuilding, or that's great for you, but it's just never been my thing. It doesn't have to be the way that I do it, but having some sort of physical exertion where you're applying that gift that God gave you in our strength, it just feels good as a man to do. And again, that doesn't look universal. There's different flavors of it, if you will. But in and of itself, it's beautiful to see. And I get to see it. Like, it'd be one thing if I was just speaking from my own experience and my data usage was just one person, but I get to see this with hundreds of people of all ages. Like my youngest client's 15, my oldest is 78. This is a universal thing. And there's a wide variety of quote unquote, the masculinity. They're not all these cookie cutter lumberjack type guys. Like there's a wide variety of type of men. But the principles underneath it are universal in that, like when you begin to apply yourself and start to possess yourself, you just feel so much more alive as a man.
For sure. Yeah, I love the universality of it because I think that so many do think, oh, well, that's not for me, or this is just for them. And I think the point that you make too of the physiology of it is even more important in our knowledge worker world, where so many of us are just sitting down all day and behind computers and things like that. We're much more stagnant. And so to not engage that part of you, I think is just missing out on a huge aspect of life. And I often tell guys, especially guys, but a lot of it applies to women as well. I'm like, you don't have to your point, be a bodybuilder, but you should have a baseline in all the different areas. Like nobody should be gassed at the top of the steps. You also should be like able to help somebody move. Both of those things are good. Like you want to have a baseline in the different categories, in your strength training of your full body and in your cardiovascular health and your endurance, that isn't just going all the way in on one or the other, which I think a lot of people tend to do. We just want to live in the extremes. Even when you get into fitness, it's like, well, I only want to do the thing that I enjoy. And it's like a big part of fitness. I think one of the beautiful things for me is doing the things that you don't enjoy and mastering that, because I came to realize, I think a huge part of just maturity and being a man especially is mastering the art of doing things that you don't want to do.
Totally.
But you ought to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
That's a big piece of what it looks like to be a man and how we push ourselves to be better. Now, one of the things I love about you, I think, again, going into the different pillars of excellence, I think you're really driven and motivated to be excellent in each of the different areas. But I want to know for you, as you're going through this journey, so fitness obviously wasn't easy at first, but you kind of get into it and it becomes something that you're really passionate about. Was there points either in your spiritual life? I know you've done a lot of like emotional intelligence journeying, mental health stuff. You've done obviously a lot professionally, financially. Which of those kind of came least naturally to you? Or, did you face the most resistance in trying to own? Because going back to my point earlier, it's easy to kind of like major in one or two. And especially when you get to the point, I think we probably both have experienced this, where you start to major in like 3 or 4, you can look at your fellow man and you're like, I'm doing pretty well. But how do you really push yourself to get and start to cover all of those bases? Which one of those was kind of the most friction filled, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think obviously, like the pursuit of the physical fitness, like I fell in love with that. It wasn't easy, but it came naturally as far as the desire. Financially, I feel like my dad was really big on success and money growing up. So I feel like I always had the desire, even though it took time to kind of get there. My interior life, I've always been very introspective and I've always been very self-aware, which a lot of guys struggle with. And I think just in the home life that I grew up in, I was just kind of forced to come to terms with a lot of that interior life. But I think coming to terms with the fact that despite me feeling very put together compared to a lot of other guys, like you said, I think admitting and putting my pride aside to say that, like, yes, I've done a lot of these things. Yes, if somebody looks at me from the outside, I look like I have it all together. But the reality is, like, there's a lot internally that is not all together. And so I think that's the area that I really had to swallow my pride in, to admit that I have a lot internally that I need to work through, of just wounds growing up, and the way that I dealt with having the lack of affirmation from my dad, and just the way that trickles down into the sins in my life. So I spent a lot of time in counseling, which was just a beautiful journey of learning that interior world, and coming to know myself in that deep way, and being willing to admit that obviously as a man, we want to be strong, we want to be put together. But being able to look at myself in that vulnerable position and say, like, there's still parts of me that are very much still just a little boy who's hurting and yearning for his father's affirmation. And there's many ways in my life that I'm just trying to compensate for that. And I'm just trying to make myself look better, feel better. But the underlying current is still that there's still a little boy who's hurting. And so I think that that's not fun to admit. And it's not like people see it from the outside, but it's that imposter syndrome that I think a lot of us deal with, that I deal with a lot of if they really knew what was going on internally, they might not think the same things about me that they see externally. And I think the beautiful thing of that is that that's pretty much everybody's struggle. And we often think that that's just our own struggle,
Right.
But it's really not. It's really a very common experience that we all go through life, and we come out with these wounds, we come out with these hurts, we come out with these inadequacies, and we try to find ways to fill them, to put a Band-Aid on top, to kind of cover them up. And we overcompensate in other ways, some healthy, some unhealthy. But getting to the point as a man where you're willing to say, yeah, I'm still kind of messed up and I'm still working through things. I just even remember just being in ministry for somebody like you who's more public and doing podcasts and speaking. Like, it can be difficult because sometimes you feel like I really have to have it all together. Like you said, right. I can't be up here speaking about these things and then I'm not living them out. But the reality is you're not going to be perfect. And that's, I think, the beauty of it is that I'm not perfect, and I'm able to relate to my clients, both men and women of all ages, because of that universal experience that I'm not perfect. I've been there before where I've had those days where I don't want to do it and I didn't do it. Like, it's not every day that I'm just like, oh yeah, I showed up because I'm the great guy and like I'm doing the virtuous thing. Like, no. There's times that I failed. And that's the important thing, I think, for me to just admit when you do mess up and be able to grow from it. There's winning and there's learning. There's not losing. And so I think just being able to move through that for me, I think I justified in my brain a lot of times that this was a strength. But I think for me, it was coming to terms with just putting my pride aside, which I think for men is difficult because we're so focused on outward and productivity. It's very easy to build up this really great image, but still be a little bit shaky on the inside. So still a work in progress.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, aren't we all? That's absolutely right. I think one of my favorite books on emotional intelligence is Emotional Intelligence 2.0. And it's got a great assessment in the book, but he kind of breaks it down into 4 main categories for emotional intelligence: self-awareness and self-management, others awareness, and others management, or like relationship management. And I really love it because I think that some books on things like that can be somewhat manipulative when they get into the other stuff. And I think that's because they fail to start with the self stuff. And so when you have self-awareness, that allows you to have better self-management. I think so many guys don't do the process, go through the process and go through the work needed to have that deeper self-awareness. And then you do have these anger outbursts or all these things that you struggle with your own self-management, or, guys I know that get into these like dark spirals downward and getting depressed and really sad and hard on themselves, excessively hard on themselves. We're both hard on ourselves, but getting to the point where it's discouraging, right? And leading to despair. That's where I think it gets really dangerous. And then I think the other thing that gets dangerous when you skip both of those and you're just focused on others management, not others awareness, other than for the fact of manipulating and controlling them. And we've both seen that in our lives as well, where you see that kind of manipulative behavior and it can be extremely toxic. And so I think that's the beautiful part of what you just described, is starting with that self-awareness, which I do think both of us were gifted a little bit more than the average person in that, of just being more introspective and having at least a better feel for kind of what's going on. We've talked about that a lot, of just like being able to express the things that we're feeling and why we're feeling them. But also I think counseling and stuff can be really helpful with that and help you to go deeper, and especially understanding your past and why you're feeling some of the things you do now that do become inexplicable, or you don't know the origins of them.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is really important in your journey or your example is, I think where mental health gets very toxic sometimes is when it gets isolated. And this idea that your mental health is that analogous to your physical health, where we can just isolate any problem and like, just because you're with your body a lot of times, there's still other things that are going to feed into it from a physiological perspective, like sleeping, eating will always impact, even if you have cancer, like something really serious. But it's easy to kind of treat the body like, oh, like this is a bodily thing. I don't think we can do that the same way with the mind. And I think that where a lot of mental health, especially, never encourage Christians to go to just totally like an atheist counselor, because like their perspective is going to be just utterly different than yours. And to think that you can treat your mental health isolated without thinking about, how much sleep are you getting? How are you eating? Are you working out? Are you praying at all, or meditating, or having any quiet time in your day, right? Yeah. How are your relationships with people that you currently have? Not just your old past broken relationships and issues, family members you have problems with, but like, are you cultivating friendships with people? Are you getting outside of the house? So thinking about all of those things together, how are you managing your money? Are you just racking up debt and like ignoring a huge problem? Because that could also just destroy your mental health, and nothing we talk about in counseling is going to fix that if you don't address that. And so that's where I think you can see the beauty of, yes, both you and I agree that counseling can be really good, therapy can be really good, but I think isolated is where it gets really dangerous to say, I'm going to just treat this and ignore the rest of my life, or hire somebody who's going to just talk to me about my past and think that that's going to now make me happy for the rest of my life.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I mean, you see that happen in just so many little relationships. Like my daughter, she's 2 years old. And if she starts having I've learned, if she starts having like an emotional outburst or whatever, I just start giving her snacks. I'm not even addressing it. And it's crazy how quickly all of a sudden things just calm down. It'd be very easy. Like, obviously I acknowledge the emotions, but it's very easy to just kind of see the lights flashing and to focus on that, and to not focus on like the actual underlying thing that's happening.
Next thing you know, you're arguing with a 2-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. About
trying to be logical.
And I've been there, done that. And I realized
that way
okay,
it never works.
Yeah, a little bit of granola bar actually solved the issue. But it's very similar with, a lot of my clients. So many things that are happening mentally, like the research is very clear of how working out and eating healthy affects anxiety, depression, ADD, all this kind of stuff. So I agree. It can't be isolated. And you have to take that multifaceted approach, because we're complex individuals, because the way God made us, we're not just a one size fits all, and we have different aspects of us. And I think one thing you highlighted, just like the communion piece is so key. And what do we want to do when we're feeling sorry for ourselves, when we're struggling? We want to isolate. We want to just go inward. And again, like I said, looking at those things of what your body is naturally trying to do is usually a good indicator of what you should do the opposite of. So when you start to feel, I just want to be more isolated, just hang out by myself, like it's probably a good indicator that you're craving communion and that you need to get outside of yourself. I think that's the cool thing about just that natural self-giving, is that like it's the same thing with others. When we serve others, when we serve the poor, it feels so good. It's such an easy life hack. If you want to feel better about yourself, go make somebody else feel better. It's the easiest thing. But I think so much of self-help, like you said, is just so focused inward, of just like, I got to fix myself and I got to manifest and do all these things. It's like, go love somebody and then see how you feel. And oftentimes it puts your life in perspective and you feel so much better, because we're made to be self-diffusive. We're made to give of ourselves. So yeah, mental health is a unique thing. And I work with a lot of people with pretty severe mental health. And it's been a beautiful experience to see how some of those foundational things of fitness and nutrition impact that bigger world.
Changes the game, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's such a sad thing, even isolating again into the physical world, of how frustrated so many of us get with the medical complex that we have now in today's world, the healthcare complex. And you think about the fact that you go to the doctor or something and they don't ask you those questions of like, how are you eating? How are you sleeping? Are you moving? And it's like, all of us know not all of us, most of us don't, I should say, but many of us know that has a huge impact on anything that you're experiencing. And so same thing in life. You have to zoom out. You have to take into account all these different aspects of your life. But I want to go back to kind of like the physical journey. One of the things that you kind of mentioned, people can look at you and say that overnight you became this, or it's easy for you. But talk a little bit. I think your physical journey is a great example of, tell me a little bit about how long it took and how hard it was, because it's one of those things that Alex Hormozi has a great quote on those two kind of points, that he says, when you're starting a business venture, similar to, I'm sure your business journey was the same way. He said, it's going to take longer and be harder than you anticipated it will be at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think the physical part is the same, because I know so many guys I've known over the years who have been really skinny and like want to put on weight. And I think it's easy with fitness, just like it is with business or any venture that you're doing, coming up on 5 years of podcasting, and to think about, oh, like it's going to be really fun to start, and the average podcast goes like 16 episodes or something like that. And everything's easy and fun at the beginning, just like marriage is going to be. You have kind of the honeymoon year, and they usually say second or third year of marriage is where things get really real and difficult. And so give us a little bit of a glimpse into that, of what the actual journey was like. Were there times you consider quitting or going back? Both. I'd love to hear both from the physical and the business side, but let's start with the physical journey.
Yeah, totally. I mean, nowadays it's so trendy to be in the gym. So there's a bunch of these high school kids in the gym, and it's a pretty common thing. Like a guy will come up to me, and high school kids are pretty blunt. So sometimes they'll just come and be like, dude, how did you get so jacked?
Yeah.
And then they don't usually like my answer, because I'm like, dude, I've been working out for 14 years at this point, and I would say at least 10 of those have been extremely disciplined with like regimented eating, consistent workouts. There's in the physical world, the honeymoon stage would be called the newbie gains. So like in the beginning, you have the newbie gains where like your body's kind of very sensitive to the stress and to the adaptation. So you have a lot of quick progress.
It's kind of like the 1,000-pound life or 600-pound life, where they lose 60 pounds out of the gate just because they stopped eating 6 pizzas a day.
Totally. So it's very similar to that. And man, I remember so many times very explicitly, and this was before social media. I think honestly nowadays I think about this a lot, that if I were to have started my journey nowadays, I think it would have been so much harder, because you look at social media and within 10 seconds you can scroll and see all of these people who feel like they have the exact whatever it is that you want. And it just seems like a dime a dozen. If you go walk the mall, it's really not. It's still pretty average out there. But with social media, it gives you you this really skewed view that, oh my gosh, everybody is just looking amazing and has everything together and all the money and stuff. And when I started, it was like I didn't have social media. I was just doing it by myself, whatever. And it was very hard to show up every single day, to continue to do the same things over and over. And the progress is so minimal. It takes so long. It takes years, literally. And this is why it's not favorable in the American culture, because our culture does not want the long, slow fix. It wants the easy, quick fix. That's why the supplement industry or the plastic surgery industries are humongous industries. So it was difficult. It's been hard. There's been many times where I've thought about quitting. Once I got into it, I started to get into the competitive side of bodybuilding and started doing physique shows. Right. Very unique experience. The first show that I did was very humbling. You're kind of all the best in shape person from your gym, and then you take all these best in shape people from your gyms and go together, and all of a sudden you're not quite the best anymore. And so it's pretty humbling. The second one was kind of a comeback, and it was just a wild physical experience from the standpoint that I bulked up to 216 pounds, which for me, being like 5'8", was really hefty. I was not comfortable eating 6,000 calories a day consistently of clean food. It's a task. Cutting down 60 pounds on stage, I was 156 pounds. It was absolutely nuts. The journey of it paid off. I won the show out of like 50 guys, Mr. Rocky Mountain, whatever to do. It was cool, but it was difficult. But that was like a microcosm journey of the bigger one. That showing up, I was in grad school. I was working at the time, going to the gym twice a day, like eating 6 to 8 meals a day. It was absolutely crazy. There were so many times where I was just like want to throw in the towel. But I couldn't keep my eyes necessarily on the end. I had to just focus on the day to day. And that's the pursuit of excellence, is like, obviously you have the goal, you have the dream, and it's good to have that perspective of what's down the road to come. But how to get there, it's good to break it up into micro goals. Because if not, it can become so overwhelming. You see these millionaires out there and you're like, okay, if I'm making $60,000 a year, how am I ever going to make $1 million? It seems out of touch, but if you can just start little by little, how can I leverage? How can I scale? It starts to become a lot more manageable. And so, yeah, the kids ask me, and it's like, dude, it took me so long. And even still today, there's times that I will wake up and look in the mirror and be like, I've done nothing. Like I've made no progress. And it's just such a mental thing. So it was very similar in the business journey, where starting off, I was kind of in a unique situation where I didn't necessarily plan to start. A lot of people come up with a business idea, come up with their approach, and they're like, I'm going to launch in the marketing, all this stuff. I just kind of started very organically because people were coming to me. So I kind of had to do all the back end stuff afterwards. But there's been many times, man, every single month, I don't have money that's guaranteed. I have to make money every single month providing for a family. It can be extremely stressful. There's been many times that it looks more appeasing to just go the more comfortable route, to just kind of like get on a W-2 job, have a consistent paycheck. But when it really comes down to it, like the first several years of my business, it was easily working 80 hours a week, 7 days a week, sun up to sundown, usually till like 2 or 3 in the morning, just trying to get it going. And it was not easy, but it was that balance between, no, it was not easy, but I was also applying myself. And there was something about that, again, that physical, that mental, that emotional application that just felt so satisfying, that I'm like actually just like trudging through and pushing myself, and trying to build something. And when I would get those wins, like it just felt so much more satisfying than just like sitting at a desk and just like clocking in, clocking out, getting a paycheck. For most people, obviously that's their life, and that's totally fine. But it was a really cool experience to kind of like parallel my physical journey with my business journey, that they're not easy. They both take a long time. They both take a lot of sacrifice. But the wins are so much more satisfying because it's not easy. Anybody can kind of like get an inheritance and get a bunch of money, and they can buy a really nice car. You can't inherit a really nice body. You can't inherit a life of virtue. These are things that take effort and time and so many decisions to get to the point where you have that built. It's just not something that can just be given. So it's really cool to see that within my clients now. And again, to speak from my own experience to them when they want to give up and they're like, dude, this is hard. Or moms are just like, I'm so burnt out taking care of kids and trying to do all these things. And I'm like, I get it. But as they continue to push through, like that satisfaction is so much greater because they were able to face the adversity. And that's the beauty, again, of just like going back to that constant message of like the things that are pushing against you that you want to kind of like fall into are probably the exact things that you should lean against and push yourself out of. So yeah, it's been a hard journey. The physical, it's no joke for sure. There's a reason why not many people walk around with a lot of excess muscle. It's a really difficult thing to attain. And our physiology is such that if you don't do anything, our body wants to gain fat and lose muscle. You have to put yourself in a unique position to gain muscle and lose fat. So it's very similar to virtue, that you have to actually try and you have to actually put yourself intentionally into position to do that. So
yeah, I think the physical, bodily, and I think with virtue, it's almost like your parents can give you genetics, and you do get genetics from your parents, obviously physically. But I think it's a good parallel to virtue, where it's like your parents, with the way that they live or don't live their lives, I think sets you up for better success in building a life of virtue.
Yeah.
Because it's easier, obviously, to build a life of virtue. You come from a good home with virtuous parents and they have virtuous friends and you're around virtuous people, compared to if you're just around degeneracy, you're being raised as like a child soldier and after, something like that. There's definitely advantages that your parents and family give you, but you're still totally free, and there's no way to just the same way you can monetarily just deposit it to your bank account and like suddenly you're rich. There's no lottery ticket for physical, excellence or living a life of virtue. You still have to build it and choose it and embrace it. Even if your parents give you great genetics, if both your parents are Olympians, you can still be overweight with that. It's not, you're not automatically going to be outstanding in any physical feat. So I think that it's a good analogy and understanding of, yes, your parents can help, and especially as we're parents, saying like, I can give my children money and just immediately change the bank account. I can't do the same thing with virtue. It's built over time and it's slower, but I still can set Jordan and Rosa up to be more prone to virtue than to vice, which is a beautiful thing, I think about the influence we have as parents. I've been having a lot of, I love kind of what I call arbitrary reflection points in your life. And so some of them are not as arbitrary, but like I do like I'm blessed to have a July birthday, so I have like a mid-year reflection on the last year of my life, and I do like an end-of-year reflection on the last year of my life. So I do it like twice a year, basically doing like a year review. But then I also have had recently like 10 years since I graduated from college. Next year will be 20 years since I became Catholic. But I love thinking about your perspective there of the last 14 years to have 10 years of those that are highly, highly disciplined, because I think that it is just it's so common for us. And I think it even more beautifully displayed potentially in like the business journey, where I think to your point there of so many people think, oh, if I just quit my job, I'll be living the dream. I'm reading this book right now called So Good That They Can't Ignore You. And it talks exactly about that. It talks about kind of like passion versus doing something that he talks about taking the passion mindset where I'm just going to go do what makes me happy versus the craftsman mindset of like, I'm going to build something I'm really good at something and develop career capital. Awesome book so far. But he highlights a lot of people who have taken steps like yours where people can look at your life. Even now, I think you're working very hard. You're not at the point now where you're working 5 hours a day. Just got it made. You haven't hit that point yet. You're still grinding. But it's easy to look at somebody like, oh, this guy loves the gym. He's fitness coaching. Like, he's living his best life. Like, this is just easy, and I should just quit and go do this. But they don't recognize the suffering and the difficulty that actually comes with that, and how so many times you have those years before that people didn't see. Because a lot of people will get into the gym for 2 or 3 months or never really take it that seriously, and they say, "Oh, now like this is something I like to do full time." And like they don't even see the 4 years before that of you working extremely hard, 5 years before that. You really even just gaining the knowledge, having the experience from going from 100 pounds to building yourself where you came. So I think that process of highlighting the old adage of like you quit working 40 hours for somebody else, you work 80 hours for yourself.
Totally.
And then also just recognizing that, yes, like going out on your own, being your own boss is beautiful and has its benefits, but the stress of the inconsistent income and all of that challenge is not for the weak or hard.
Yeah, no, certainly. Yeah, it's been a wild journey, and it's been a beautiful thing to now walk with people. I think that's been the best part of it, is that it's not something that I just like found for myself, but I really am able to give to others, and in a very real and authentic way. I see a lot now, social media. You have these people who are really wealthy, and they are just like, they're just killing it, whatever, these millionaire people. And so they'll put the thing about, oh, I made 200K last month. If you want to learn how I made 200K, send me the word blah, blah, blah. And like, I'll send you my free guide. And then you have like probably hundreds of these people who are working just mundane W-2 jobs, like not in a big excess of income. And they're throwing money at these people to try to learn how to make 200K a month. And it's beautiful. Like if you can break out of it and do it, that's great. But they're, in a sense, they're kind of preying on people's desperation for freedom. That's not what I sell to people. There's fitness coaches who definitely do that. When people come to me, I don't sugarcoat it. I'm like, this is going to be a hard journey. I can give you the directions, but you have to drive there. I cannot do it for you. It's going to be a difficult journey, but if you do it, it's going to be so worth it. Whereas from the other approach, it can be very easy to just kind of take just send me the word and I'll send you this guide. And it's going to be this easy thing. Like if you just follow these steps, you're going to be there. And it's like, it just doesn't work that way in reality. And even if it does, like this whole epidemic with weight loss medications, they are very effective, but there's also a lot of side effects that go along with them, and they're not sustainable. They don't differentiate between fat and muscle. They really can wreak havoc on your metabolism. There's a lot of things like that. So it can look very attractive. You have these girls they just seem like they're just absolutely killing it and not trying that hard, and they're taking medication, whatever. It can be easy to go that route. But it's so much more satisfying and healthy when you do it the right way, but it's long and it's hard. And so it's that constant battle that's within us of like, do I take the shortcut or do I do it the right way?
It's pretty amazing to see that just the popularity of the weight loss drugs and how that has really impacted the physical life. Similar to like, if there was anything to my point before, I was like, you can't win the lottery when it comes to physical fitness. Those sort of things. This is the closest thing I think there's ever been to that. And even when you think about ChatGPT or the advancement of AI, and now people looking at doing Neuralink and all these different things that are, I think, can be very similarly cheat codes in the intellect, where you don't have to spend time studying or learning or doing the things that people have to do in the past to actually be learned and knowledgeable, but you're going to have this just kind of automatic fast forward into being super advanced in some of these things. But the reality is you can't replace the fulfillment that comes from the journey.
Yeah.
It's obviously a cliche to say it's about the journey, not about the destination. And I think we both recognize too, when you arrive at the destination, it's still pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Like, it's still fun winning Mr. Rocky Mountain. It's still fun being jacked. It's still fun being financially successful. But there is something beautiful that you almost like yearn and look back to about the grind of getting there.
It's just really quick while you're on that. After I won that show, I went to Cancun like a couple days after to kind of celebrate. And I found myself on the beach, and I just broke down actually crying. And it was the reality that I had put in I can't even like quantify to most people how much effort I put in, what I was doing, the amount of cardio, this type of eating, the intense like cutting that I was doing to get to the point where I won like this little metal trophy. I mean, it was pretty big. It was pretty cool. But to just all of a sudden, okay, like that's it. I've often wondered, like, guys who win the Super Bowl or like the NBA championship or whatever, it's got to feel sweet. And like you're popping champagne, it's amazing.
Yeah.
But I really do think there is something like when you come down from that, you're just like, is that it?
Right.
And I think that's like the pursuit of excellence for us is like, you can become the greatest person. You can do all of these insane things. But when you die, like it's all over.
Yeah.
You're not taking any of that with you. And I think that's where I felt like in that moment of after that show, I was just like on the beach crying. And I was like, is that it?
Yeah.
But the satisfaction, like nobody was there those 4 a.m. days that I was going to the gym, like those times that I was still up till midnight working, and like nobody was there for those, but like that was the meat and potatoes. That was sweet. That's what I look back and I'm like, man, I did that. People see the end. But yeah, so it really is about the journey. And that's where, that like you said, the cheat codes, it's just not the same.
They rob you of that. The day after you graduate, right before we were about to graduate, not the day after, it was like there's like a few days before you graduate from Ranger School where you're kind of back doing admin stuff, just stuff in your face because you're so depleted. And one of the like counseling sessions or presentations they give is talking about that. I still remember being in the classroom that I was at Fort Benning, Georgia, and them talking about like, guys, you have been thinking about this. This has probably been like all consuming for you. For some of you for a year, for some of you for 5 years, for some of you a decade since you were a little boy. And now you just accomplished it. Like there's something very real about finding like that next thing that you're going to go do. And for me with the Life of Excellence, one of the things that comes from like my weekly excellence tracker, the examination of excellence, these resources I've put together that have been really helpful for me is, and even just thinking about family life and friends and things as we're going through this big transition this year, having a baby, selling a house, moving, buying a house, moving again. It's just having this, one of the key things I think for our Life of Excellence is this deep capacity for bearing responsibility. And because you have to have this great, I think almost like insane balance of looking in the mirror when you're jacked and being like, I haven't done anything.
Yeah.
And being able to also not always be that way.
Yeah.
Because you have to sometimes like be in the mirror, like get in the pump and you're like, I look great.
Yeah.
You have to have both of those.
Totally.
And it's this weird thing that most people can't find that good balance of having both of those things. Because I think about it even just my to-do list. I sit down on Mondays right now as we're going through all these things in life. And the to-do list is just insane.
Oh, yeah.
And I never get to the end. I legitimately just never get to the time where I'm like, oh, the only way I get close to the end is if I haven't stopped that day to think of like, what else do I need to do?
Sure.
And I haven't added to do things.
Yeah.
Right? And then usually like 11 p.m., I'm like, I use my text messages to myself and I just text myself the 4 things that I remember I have to do. And they always take longer than I think they will. But I'm like going through all these different aspects of my life. And it's like, there's so much to do. There's so much weight and responsibility that even when you do accomplish one thing, it's like, oh, I had a really good week in the gym. Oh, well, how was my spiritual life this week? I prayed 3 times.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, I haven't been on a date with my wife in 3 months.
Yeah.
It's like you get to these, when you actually look at all of it, you have to have this capacity of being like, I can actually celebrate the wins and I can look at the learnings and say, okay, in the weak areas and say, I need to improve these now. And it's this ever ongoing journey, I think, for those who want to venture, but you have to have this ridiculous stamina to recognize that I just never actually arrived, that there's always something that, I put a lot of effort into family life this week. This was great. Like, I took a week off, an extra paternity week to go and be with my family at home, and I'm with the kids all day. We're having a great time. Nothing happened for CPX that whole week.
Sure.
I have 250 emails in my Hallow inbox,
Yeah.
right? Like I just got promoted to manager now, and so now I have all these other responsibilities. Oh yeah, I dropped this email to this person, and all these things are behind, and it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to develop this capacity for just recognizing. Yes, I can celebrate the wins. I can be proud of who I am and the life I'm building. But I think my approach, I want to hear your thoughts on this, is that in building a great life altogether, it's almost like building a great house. It's like every room feels undone because you can't ever just build one room.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do like the flooring in every single room.
Mm-hmm.
And so the hard part is there's like nowhere to go where it just always feels like it's great. When you finish kind of like, you feel like you're getting kind of one room put together. It's like something you go to another one. You're like, wow, I've really been neglecting this. Now I got to build this up a little bit. And then the other one starts to decay a little bit while you're going in that one. But at the end of your life, I do think that doing that and being intentional and being able to celebrate the wins and embrace the losses and the learnings and efficiencies is actually how you build that beautiful house.
Totally,
eventually
man.
you get to the point where you're like, wow, something great has happened. And we get to experience that even in our early 30s now, of seeing just the effort in all those areas over the last 10 years that we know when we're 60, we're going to be really proud and glad that we did things the way that we did.
Yeah.
But it's still on the way there. It just almost never feels good.
Yeah. No, totally. Yeah. I was thinking I was gonna like ask you, how do you think you build that capacity? But even just in thinking about it, man, I can't tell you how real that balance is in my life right now. Like, especially owning a business. Like last year had my record year. Every year's pretty much been a record year, and then like January was a record month, and it's like you want to sit in those, and you want to just like stay on top of the mountain, but you realize like, oh, I have to come back down. There's still more work to do, and it is such a humbling thing. And in the family life, like, all right, we did the whole day. It's exhausting. We did all the dishes, got the kids to bed, cleaned the house. Like, oh, we can finally breathe. But it's like a couple hours, like 12 hours later, you're going to do it all again. And it can be so exhausting, like you said, to get to that point where you feel like this literally never is going to end. I'm never going to get to the point where I just feel like I'm absolutely killing it.
Yeah.
And I think that is the biggest illusion in life, is that you look at these people that you think actually feel that, and they really don't.
Yeah.
And that's the dichotomy that I love between the Mother Teresa and the millionaire, or the queen when she met them. Like, Mother Teresa's toes are mangled, her face is wrinkled, her sari has been restitched so many times that there's no original material left. She has nothing that she owns of her own, but the satisfaction that she has, like she quite literally like did make it, even though she felt so miserable. But then we look at these people. Yeah, we look at these people who are. I've had clients who are multimillionaires, and they've just told me, Dakota, like, it's not what it's all cracked up to be. Like, yes, it's great, it's beautiful, but the more you have, the more you can lose. And so I love what you said about like that capacity for responsibility. And I think the only way to develop that capacity is to do it. Yeah. It's the same thing with like building muscles. Like, how do I grow my body? How do I lose fat? There's no other way to do it than just to do it, to put in the hard work to get there. And it's painful. That expansion, it's like stretching when you're trying to expand a muscle. It's super painful. Getting a deep tissue massage is like, oh, this really hurts. I don't see me for my benefit. But man, it's hard. But it's a beautiful thing to like know that pain is purposeful.
Yes. Have you ever seen it's like Irish guys, or they're British or something like that, and the one guy was talking about how he's like lost weight from like 400 pounds. They were like, one guy just like very naively is like, how'd you like get to 400 pounds? He looks at him. Have you ever seen this? He looks at him like he's so dumb, and he's like, how did I get there? He said, brother, I ate more than I moved. Yeah, and they just like bust out. It's like five guys. Like, they just bust out laughing. He's like, pretty simple, honestly. Yeah. I ate more than I moved. Yeah. How do you get back down? I moved more than I ate. Yeah. It's like the math is pretty simple on those things. But you're exactly right, man. It's just embracing the difficult times of life, embracing the responsibility that you currently have, and so many men and women just shirk from that. It's when you're going back to what we talked about at the very beginning of, it's easy to major in one or two areas to ignore the others. When you are just focused on your fitness and just getting by at work, and then you neglect your spiritual life, that's not embracing responsibility, because you're responsible for your soul, you're responsible for professional life, for your vocation. Even when you're not married, you still have those responsibilities. And are you actually striving for excellence in those things? Because it is just an absolute grind, dude. And even when you feel like you're going forward, you feel sometimes like you're going backwards.
Mm-hmm.
I've had this experience. It's been so crazy this summer. I have my intern whose name is Summer. So it's kind of funny. I have a summer intern named Summer, and she's amazing. It's been so good having her on the team. I've slowed down the podcast to try to get ahead. She's doing great work and like accomplishing all these things that I've like wanted to do and didn't have the time for so long. I feel like I'm working more and seeking excellence this summer. And still, I'm like, we haven't done anything. Like we've been on pause, and like we had kind of said, like, let's take a month to kind of gather things. And I was like, I think I need another month because I haven't gotten the recording done, all the things that I wanted to do, and yet still, I feel like I'm like grinding harder than I ever have.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, I have more work responsibility. You know, my full-time job as sales manager now than I've ever had before. More people relying on me that need my time and attention, have to work harder and longer than I ever have. And still, I'm just like, am I progressing at all?
Yeah.
You know, am I actually moving the ball forward? But then taking time to zoom out and say, like, look, I do track things and see how things are growing. And certain aspects of seeking excellence are stagnant. Certain aspects are growing and doing great. And so it's being able to zoom out and say, yes, this is growing. Yes, this is better. Yes, I have more responsibility and work is harder and weighs on me more, but I'm also getting paid more. I've grown in certain aspects in certain areas of my life. Yes, I don't feel like I have time for seeking excellence, but I have lost weight this year because I prioritized going to the gym and being more active and I've still been very present and around with my family throughout the year and supportive and helpful as we transition to 2 kids. And so you have to zoom out and look at it. But I think there's also a reality that too, where some people, if you zoom out and you are just being mediocre and everything, you don't feel like you have the wins to celebrate.
Yeah.
Because they don't just naturally come. That progress doesn't actually naturally come.
Yeah.
It's when you're grinding, and not just grinding, but working intentionally and intelligently to actually advance and make progress in the key areas.
This guy came up to me in the gym the other day. He was kind of just one of those head nod friendship type guys. Really cool guy, young guy. Definitely, I could tell he has a colorful past. And he just came up to me the other day, and he was like, "Can I just ask you a question?" I was like, "Of course, dude." And he was like, "I just feel like I'm just like slacking in so many areas." And he was talking to me. He's like, he came to know Jesus like fairly recently in his life, and he's really been devoting himself to try to like just learn more and become more devout and pray more. And he's like, dude, the more that I try, the more that I feel like I'm just failing. And he's like, I feel like I should be advancing because I'm like coming to know all these things. Like I'm finally changing my life around and like growing away from these ways that I was just living like an absolute idiot. And like I'm actually coming to know Jesus. But I feel like I'm absolutely failing. And the analogy that I used for him was like if there's an extremely bright light far away and you're holding like a white t-shirt that's dirty, when you're far away, looks pretty nice. The closer you get to that light, the dirtier it looks.
Yeah.
But if you're just focused on the t-shirt, you're just like, why is this t-shirt getting so dirty? You don't actually realize that you're getting closer to the light. And I think that's so important that you're talking about is like, yeah, sometimes the more that we progress, the more that we notice that contrast. And it's got to be the same in the spiritual life. You think of these great saints who thought they were actually miserable people. They thought they were just degenerates. And we look at them and we're like, you are the all-stars. You are the Hall of Famers. And that's the beauty of the life of excellence is that it's not a life of completion. It's a life of progression. And no matter what we do and where we get, we're always going to be imperfect until we're made perfect with him. And we cannot do that by ourselves. Thankfully, he's given us the grace and the means to do a lot of that and he does give us that responsibility that like, no, I'm not just going to do this for you. You're not just going to die and I'm going to give you a clean slate and you're just going to be good to go. Like we do have to put effort into making ourselves better. But remembering that the closer you get to that light, the more stains you're going to see on that shirt. But like you said, you have to move closer to the light. And a lot of people, it's very easy to kind of stay back because you're like, looks pretty good.
Right.
Looks pretty clean. And it can be scary to make that progress forward. So yeah, it's not an easy thing to do by any means, but I love what you do because I think it's just the mundane, walking with people and painting them the big picture of like, this is the life of excellence. And it's not going to be a one size fits all. And it's not going to be a quick program that you can just buy. Like it's the life of excellence and lives are a long period of time. So, I just
can crush it for a season.
Yeah.
Still fail in the long run.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that's the exact reason why I feel this way with seeking excellence this year. It's like, why do I feel like I haven't done anything? Because we're actually opening up all these areas I've just ignored for 3 years.
Yeah.
And actually making progress in those. And so the couple things that I have been focused on, it's kind of like when you do say, oh, I'm crushing in my physical life, but I'm ignoring my spiritual life and my job and all this kind of stuff. It's like, well, when you actually start to try to be excellent in those other areas, physical life probably, for most people, it's probably going to decline a little bit. If you are spending 2 hours a day in the gym, like for a lot of people, that's going to have to decrease to 1 hour.
Totally.
And like what you felt like was your 10 before now has to come down a little bit because you are prioritizing some of the other things. Same thing with like financial stuff. It's like, yeah, you can work 12 hours a day and not see your family. But when you do say, I'm going to prioritize my family too and try to be a great father and husband, a lot of times your financial stuff is going to come back a little bit because there is some give and take in those different areas.
Totally.
Which is all really important. But man, thank you so much. It was so good to get to chat with you again.
Yeah,
Hopefully
absolutely.
people I can't wait to go back and look and see the difference of our synergy the first time compared to the day where we were strangers. And now I'm blessed to call you a good friend of mine, man. It's been such a good time. So I'm so grateful for you and for the work that you're doing and helping people. So tell people where they can find you and work with you.
Oh yeah, so everywhere I'm pretty much Dakota Lane Fitness, so dakotalanefitness.com, Instagram, Dakota Lane Fitness, Facebook. Love helping people and walking with people. I love what you're doing. I appreciate you having me on, and thank you for investing in people and believing in people. It's a beautiful mission, and it's definitely needed.
Thanks, brother. All right, thank you so much.